Okay. Is that better? You can hear me now?
Yeah, and I don't know the thing, but it's breaking up quite a bit.
Right, okay. I'm not sure what we can do about that. So okay. I'll start fresh then. Thanks, Selma.
Right.
Yes. Okay, guys. So today we're going to be focusing on improving your time. It's not just about the strategies that you use, it's also about your mindsets and how you view time and how you view others and their time as well. So without more of a delay, let's move on. And something that shocked me a few years ago is just understanding just how productive people are. And that's what we're talking about with our time, right? We want to be more productive. We can't work any harder. But how do we become more productive? And when I understood how many hours the average, or how many productive hours the average employee or worker is quite shocking. So in an 8-hour day, the average worker spends 4 hours and 12 minutes actively working. So it's up to you what you choose to do with that information. But how might you view your employees when you hear that? So what could we do to improve that? What is the challenge? Part of it's due to stress, anxiety, burnout, poor time management skills. So how do we improve this for you and for your team? Well, this is a quote that I quite like, and I'm also a fan of Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. If you listened to me before, you probably heard me mention him many times. And his final habit, the 7th habit, is sharpening the axe, or sharpening the saw, as he says. And this is an interesting quote that Abraham Lincoln said: is, if I had 6 hours to cut down a tree, I'd spend the first 4 hours sharpening the axe or the saw. So what does sharpening the saw mean? Well, to me, it's you're the axe, you're the saw, and you're the tool needed to accomplish your work, much the same as your people are the tool that they need to accomplish their work. And your mind and your body allows you to accomplish that work efficiently, fast, slow, depending on how well you look at it. So to start with, what I want to do is I just want to have a look at to see how we can maximize ourselves so that we give ourselves the best possible chance of having the sharpest saw to give us the best possible results. And something to think about is if you're working 50 plus hours a week, which is common amongst business owners. In fact, business owners are probably the only people who will work 80 hours for themselves because they won't work 40 hours for somebody else. But studies show that anything greater than 50 hours a week is just wasted time. You're just not productive in those additional hours. So if you are that person, just stop that right away. And let's look at what else we can do to make you more productive. So this is something that I live my life by, and it's a secret really to longevity and living a longer and healthy life. But this actual acronym I picked up from a 78-year-old guy who's running for president of Singapore, and it sinks exactly into what I think is important to live a long and healthy life. And by a long and healthy life, I mean a life that's, well, they say it's not the length of life, it's the life. It's not the life, it's not the years in your life, it's the life in your years, right? So we don't want to be getting to the 70 and then living in a home for 10 years. We want to live a long, fruitful life till we're 100. Well, I certainly do, but enjoying that and be physically active. And these 6 items will help you do that. And they'll also help you be more productive in your work, help your team be more productive in your life and in your work. So the number one is sleep. For many years, people would say that I'll sleep when I die. You know, it was a badge of honor if you worked long hours, you got up, went home late, and didn't do much sleeping. But the studies show that less than 7 hours a night sleep, depends on the individual, but on average, less than 7 hours, you're 30% more likely to be obese. Less than 6 hours sleep a night, and your level of mortality, your level of mortality rises 13%. Another stat is 200,000 working hours are lost each year just through insufficient sleep. So are we prioritizing sleep? And an interesting fact that if we focus on the individuals and help them to understand the importance of this stuff, they're going to be better in their working environment as well. So the next one is, how do we handle stress? Now, I meditate every day, but that's not for everybody, and most people don't do meditation. But there's lots of things you can do to calm down and handle stress. Yoga, exercise, which we mentioned on this as well. But there's lots of ways you can use to handle stress. Just having some quiet time. A lot of people can use cleaning or cooking as a form of meditation, fishing as a form of meditation. So what are we doing to handle the stress? I mean, there's loads of stats around how much stress impacts productivity at work. Something like 14.5 million working days in the UK are lost due to stress, anxiety, depression, and almost 1 in 5 UK workers are stressed and receive, let me get this right, 1 in 5 UK workers are stressed. And when they look at businesses who invest in their employees to help them reduce their stress, like education or different ways of doing that, they find that there's a 200% return on investment for every pound invested in staff well-being through efficiencies and productivity. So getting something like that as a HR strategy is an excellent way to improve the productivity of your team. Just look at what happens if somebody's off for a day or for a week because of stress or whatever the reason they're off for. What impact does that have on everybody else and then their working morale? And it goes on. So massive return on investment you can get through investing in your team's well-being. Encourage breaks and discourage things like eating at the desk. Get people to move away from the desk. Again, be the change you want to see. If you're always doing it, they'll follow your example. Communicate and keep staff informed of changes that are affecting them. That'll help reduce their stress. Train your workforce to create awareness and offer possible techniques and solutions to handle stress. The third one here is about interactions. Now, when they look at people who live in blue zones, who have lived a long and healthy life, they find that they're really sociable people. In the UK, we find we're moving away from being sociable animals and we're spending time on our phones. So maybe this is an opportunity for you to promote this or have social interactions. I know a lot of successful companies have ways of bringing their teams together for social events. Exercise, I think, is well publicized as just about what impact that can have on everybody. If you start the day off with a run or time in the gym, you're going to have increased energy. Your mood's going to be improved. You have higher self-confidence, better brain health, and again, reduced anxiety, reduced stress levels means you're less likely to have time off sick and be more productive in your role. Learning. This is just an essential, I think, for individual growth. We now know that your brain doesn't have a limit to its capacity and it will self-generate. It will get bigger and keep growing if we use it. We used to think that our brain cells died and they never get replaced, but you can replace them now. But you've got to use it or you lose it. So it also increases blood flow to the brain. So things like Alzheimer's and diseases like that, they're less of a risk if you're using your brain to learn, and it's greater brain health. So, and again, this all increases your capacity to be able to do more and be more productive. And then finally, diet. Again, you'll have greater energy when we're eating better. If we're eating sugars and we're eating processed foods, we'll lose our energy. There'll be less days off sick, again, less stress, better sleep, and it prevents disease. If you think about disease, is when your body is at dis-ease. So if you're not eating correctly, or if you're eating sugar a lot and it's spiking your blood sugar and impacting your body, then your body's at dis-ease, and that's why you'll be getting diseases. So 6 items there. Just make a note on your notes for each of those. Score yourself out of 10 how you perform, but how you are with each of those. And then for the lowest one, perhaps take an action, or take an action for more than one if you feel the need to. But also consider how you can educate your team on these 6 areas so that they can start taking advantage of this. We're undereducated in the Western world about these sort of things. Things are getting better, but still the vast majority of people are underestimated about the impact that this can have. So how can you help your team to live a better, healthier life, which they're going to appreciate and they're going to be more motivational for, and they're going to want to give back to you, and they're going to be more productive, which means that you'll be working less in your business. Good. So take the learning from that, and then let's move on to see just an understanding around time management, if you like. Well, there is no such thing as time management. Everybody has 168 hours a week. Is that right? I'm just doubting myself with the maths. 168 hours in the week. It's amazing how some people get a lot more done than others. So I think the first thing we need to understand is that you can't do everything. You will not get everything done. There's too much on your, too much of a tag, or what's the word I'm looking for? There's too many things trying to get time and your attention. So you've got to learn what to say no to, and more importantly, what to prioritize. So you can't do everything, but let's put it a different way. So when people say to me they haven't got something done, it will generally be followed with an excuse. Oh, this happened, this happened, this happened. The reality is they haven't done it because they've prioritized something else. It's as simple as that. That didn't get done because we did this. In fact, if somebody's saying that they didn't get something done, ask them just to check the screen time. If they're saying they said they didn't have enough time, ask them just to check the screen time on their phone and just see how many hours that they've spent, and ask them then, have they had enough time to do it? We've got enough time for what's important, so we've got to prioritize that. Second thing here is our mindset. Now, talking to a client earlier this week, a new client earlier this week, they were saying that they're struggling to when somebody asks them a problem, it's just easier for them to jump in and do it themselves rather than keep explaining to them how to do it. So what we've got to think about is how we invest our time. And we'll come on to that in a bit more detail. But we need to understand that to start with, it might take us more time. But if we could invest a bit of time, that's going to save time ongoing. So leverage is an Americanism, if you like, but using a lever to get more with less. That's what the word means. And if you can create a system, a process around something that you do that will be easily transported to somebody else who's not got the skill that you have, but they could follow a process. If it takes you an hour or two to write that process or produce that process, but giving it to somebody else saves you 10 minutes a week, every week for the rest of your life, is it worth investing that hour or two? That's what I want you to think about, changing your view on time and how you invest it, and think about it as a return on investment. Also, how do you view time for yourself and for others? Are you respecting the time of others? Are you respecting the time of yourself? If you're having a meeting, are you letting meetings overrun, or are you respectful of the time that you've got? When you have meetings, do you set parameters at the beginning of the meeting? So we've got an hour. This is what we'd like to achieve. What do you want to achieve? If you set an outcome for the meeting, you'll quite often find that you don't need to last the whole hour or the time that you've got. If you could solve your what you want to get out of the meeting within 5 minutes, then you've saved yourself 55 minutes. So simple ways to save yourself time by being proactive up front. So if we think about mastery and how you can master time, again, you can't master time, but you can master yourself, you can master planning, and you can master delegation. So let's have a look at these and see a bit about time and what's tugging for your attention. Now, I mentioned already Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And one of the habits in there, he talks about doing first things first. And he splits it into a matrix. Now, what he's talking about here is he's splitting what you do, your tasks and your activities, into what's urgent and what's important. Now, some of what you do is urgent and important. I think before we explore this any further, let me just explain to you the difference between urgent and important. Important tasks, that will get you towards your goals. So when you've set your goals, your long-term goals, whatever your goals are, something important will help you get there. Something urgent won't necessarily. It could do. And if we look at this first quadrant 1, fighting fires, it's important because you've got to do it, probably because you didn't do it last week or the week before. And it's urgent because it's been left to the last minute. You will always have an element of urgent firefighting, but I'll show you how you can reduce that. So this will be your crises, your pressing problems, your deadlines that have come and gone, and you've got to do it now because it's gone past its deadline. Now, number 2 is the quality time. Now, this is the stuff that is still important, will help you get towards your goals, but because it's not urgent, it's probably the area that suffers the most. Because if you're honest, or if most of us are honest, we tend to go to urgent stuff first. Now, quadrant 1 is important as well as urgent, so we've got to do that. Quadrant 3 is urgent, but it's not important. So distractions is quadrant 3. So could be some people are calling up, they think it's urgent, or the phone's ringing makes it sound urgent, but it's not going to help you achieve your goals. Some mail or emails, some reports that you don't need to be seeing, some meetings, some things like this might seem urgent. The need is to question whether they are. Are they going to help you get towards your goals? And the 4th box here, time wasting. This is not urgent and not important, but we still do an element of this. Now, in your life, you might say, well, I quite enjoy a bit of surfing on the internet. Well, if that's the case, then schedule some time for it. Don't let yourself get dragged mindlessly into it without you realizing it. If you want to do some time wasting, some pleasant activities, some trivia or whatever it is, or web searching, then schedule your time for that. And the rest of the time, be focused on your to-do list. So I'm going to show you this in a different format. So if we think about it as a target, these things on the outside are not urgent, not important. Probably we're spending 10% of our time there. If you think you're working 40 hours a week, if you could save 10% of your time by stopping doing that, that's 4 hours. The urgent and not important, this is the interruptions. This is the people that you don't really need to be speaking to. Or they're, because they're interrupting you, they're stopping you being focused, which means you're less productive. So how could you get rid of those for certain times of the day? Okay, you might need to see them for some proportion of the day, these interruptions, phone calls, notifications. But if you could get rid of them for, say, an hour a day or 2 hours a day, how productive could you be in that focused time? If you could tell everybody in the business that you're not available for an hour in the morning, an hour in the afternoon, how much more productive could you be? And before you say, I can't do that, people need me, they need to, what would happen if you went to the hospital? What would happen if people have those queries when you're at the hospital? They get by themselves, don't they? So you can generally find an hour or two a day to have focus time. So manage those urgent and not important things. Now, your urgent and important, that's high if you've got time challenges, because that's your firefighting. That's the chaos, if you like. That's because we're not spending enough time in this important zone in the middle here. So this zone in the middle, this is the working on the business. This is investing your time. And if you thought about a task that if you did it consistently would have the biggest impact on the business, it probably falls into that zone there. Because no, I'm saying that if you did it, which means you're currently not doing it, but if you did it, it'd have the biggest impact. Could it be having valuable one-to-ones with your team to motivate them and to get them more productive, train them so that they could do more? Could it be writing a process so somebody else can take some of your work and they could do it more efficiently and you could focus on the higher value items? So working on the business will get you towards your goals and will actually mean that you're more productive and you've got less of this urgent and important stuff, less firefighting, because you're proactively sorting that stuff. You're being proactive rather than reactive. When you work on the 3 outside areas, all you're doing is you're just perpetuating the now. You're keeping the status quo. Things are just going to carry on as they are if you keep working on the urgent and not important stuff. The only way to move forward and get towards your goals is to work on the not urgent but important stuff. So just make a note now in your workbooks. What area could you, if you worked on consistently, would have the biggest impact? What do you need to do to make that time to do that? And we spoke a moment ago about having focus time. Let's say that you've got quotes to put out. That's quite a focused job. And if you're getting interruptions when you're trying to get into an in-depth quote, for example, then every time you've got an interruption, even if it's just your phone pinging with a notification or the phone ringing, even if you don't answer it, you're out of your flow. And you've got to capture your thoughts before you can get back into the flow where you were before. So if you just have an hour's focus time where there's no interruptions and you can get into that flow of moving really quickly where you just focus on that one thing, you'll be amazed at the speed in which you go. In fact, you probably know the speed in which you go when you're focused. It can take an hour's focus time, can be as much as an hour and a half, 2 hours unfocused time, 3 hours unfocused time. So what could you focus your time to improve your productivity and that for your team? And what action might you take to improve that? Give you a moment to consider that. Once we're mindful about what we should and shouldn't be working on, the next step is to get some analysis. Just exactly where is your time being spent? What is it that you're doing? So here's a simple task for you. Over the course of the next 2 weeks, record where you're spending your time. Just have a tick sheet or something you can jot down what you've been doing every 15 minutes throughout the day. Do that for 2 weeks. Most people that do that, first of all, find a realization of where a lot of their time's going. That's the first thing that a lot of people find. But the second thing is we'll be able to group together what sort of tasks you're doing and whether they're enjoyable tasks, whether they're not enjoyable tasks, whether they're high skill tasks or low skill tasks. We need to capture all that information. Also, as well as what's taken up your time, you'll find out who's taken up your time. If you've got one person that's a time drain or a drain on your time, what can you do to help them? Do they need some more specific training? Do they need to understand the impact of their behavior? Do they need to be measured more effectively around whether they're getting their job done so we can manage them so they spend less time interrupting you? So think about who as well as what is using up your time. So let's break this down into a matrix. You see, I love a matrix. On this matrix, we're going to plot some of the tasks that you've been doing. Now, this matrix, you can see on one side, on the bottom, we've got fun, whether you enjoy it, high fun, or you don't enjoy it, it's low fun. And then on the left-hand side, we've got skill. Now, is this task a low skill task, or is it a high skill task? Now, we're going to take the information that you've got from your time log that you've recorded over a 2-week period, and we're just going to plot it onto here. So I've got some examples here. So some examples of low fun, low skill. It's going to be different for each person. Cleaning the office, opening up in the morning, invoices, all a low skill and low enjoyment for this individual. Phone calls, incoming phone calls. This person doesn't enjoy them. Maybe they're medium skill. Staff queries and interruptions. What else have we got here? Customer issues, quoting, estimating. So medium fun, medium skill on these. And then strategic planning, sales, key account relationships. That's high skill, high fun for this individual. So once we've got this information, we can then start to think, well, what we're going to do with this. So this stuff here, this low fun, low skill in the red pound box indicates that this is actually stuff or jobs that you could do. You could, what's the word? You could pay somebody a low income to do this. Somebody with low skill but's got a great attitude. Let's say that we hired somebody that we found that's got a great attitude, really enthusiastic, willing to learn, but they've got no skill in our business and they're limited skill. We could put a simple process together. They could follow that process and they could do that well. And then as they build their confidence, they could move up to a greater paid job, to greater skill level, and so on. First of all, the tasks that you're doing that are low skill and low fun, those are the ones that we want to write a process around and get somebody else to do. Now, that somebody else could be a new hire, an apprentice, or somebody like that who's got a great attitude but low skill. It could equally be outsourced to a virtual PA. So these ones in the middle here, would probably pay somebody £25 an hour for that. Create a process for a VA. They'll probably do it in half the time that you do it. And these jobs up the top here, these are the ones that are a higher skill level, high enjoyment. And for these ones, we've got to allocate time into a diary that's your default to go to, your default to go to on your week. So let's have a look at that in a moment. But first of all, I want to help, because on that previous screen, we talked about getting somebody else to do some of your tasks for you. And whether that's a low paid individual with low skill or a virtual assistant, quite often we can have the mindset of, I haven't got anybody else who can do it and I can't afford another wage. But often if we've got that mindset of saving ourselves a wage, we're actually costing ourselves a fortune. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's use this example. Imagine you're an accountant and you've got a little accountancy practice and you're earning, your hourly rate's £100 an hour. Now you're doing 40 hours a week and you're working, for math's sake, we're saying 50 weeks per year. So you've got an earnings of £200,000. You think, well, that's okay. I can live on that. That's great. But the reality is that you're not earning that £200,000. The reality is that you're doing 20 hours a week at your 100, but 20 hours a week you're doing on other stuff, like you're doing invoicing, or you're doing little admin tasks, you're doing running around the bank, going to the bank, opening up. You're doing these tasks that you could pay somebody £10 an hour to do. So the reality is that you're actually only earning 120 hours a week. Now, increase this to the size of your business, and you can hopefully start to see that every hour you spend doing that low value task, you're costing your business and your profits that difference in pay. You know, arguably, if you're a business owner and you should be working on this top right hand side box here, arguably that is £100, £200, £1,000 an hour work, because your hourly rate really is the turnover of the business divided by the number of hours that you work in the week. So really important that we understand that just by saving a wage, we can quite often be costing ourselves a fortune. Once we've understood that we've got this stuff that we want to give to somebody else, how do we do it effectively? And effective delegation is something that nobody's ever taught, and many people struggle to do. So first step, we mentioned already, do a basic time log. A time log will help you find the tasks that you should be delegating. That's that low skill stuff and low fun. And again, look for the things that you don't want to do. What we're looking to do here is to find 5 hours a week so that you can work on the business. And you get that 5 hours a week, it will lead to 6, 7, 10, and so on. We want to get you sort of 4 or 5 hours a week to start building that traction. And with delegation, it's about letting go as much as it is about the team. What many business owners find as a struggle is to let go. For instance, with a virtual assistant, a lot of people don't even have the opening conversation with a virtual assistant because they think it's going to be too much trouble to show them what to do. Trial a virtual assistant, give them a simple task to get to do, and you'll probably find that they can do a lot more than you think. It's important also that we don't just abdicate. Abdication is just saying, this is what I want you to do, go and do it. Delegation takes time. Delegation can take time to train somebody, to write a process around it, to follow up with them, to encourage them until they find their feet. It's micromanagement. You've got somebody who's new to a task, you're going to need to micromanage them for a little while. But think about it again, as we mentioned at the start, this is about investing your time. Time invested in delegation will get you time back to be able to spend as you want. Working on the business, or time with the family, or time looking after yourself. So these are the basics to delegation. So from what we've just spoken about in the last couple of slides, just make some notes. What action could you take from those, and what's been most useful to you? So another important concept in getting your time back is eat the frog. Now, this is a saying from Mark Twain, the American author, who said once that if you start the day off by eating a frog, you like the graphic, the picture? You can be safe in the knowledge that this is going to be the worst thing you're going to do all day. And Brian Tracy took this analogy and he used it in a time management book called Eat the Frog. It's a fantastic book even, with 21 strategies on how to improve or become more productive. So I've actually got a cheat sheet on that, a PDF. If you want that, just message me and I'll send it over to you, or get and read the book. The book is a great book. So the idea is that if you've got a task that's probably the most important task, or will have the biggest impact, it doesn't mean it's going to be the task that will take you the longest, like somebody I spoke to the other day thought. It could be a simple, short task, but it's going to have the biggest impact on your business. Now, that task often is something you're putting off. And when you put off this task, it doesn't just disappear away from your head. It's still in your subconscious brain. And your subconscious brain can only hold on to 7 things at once. So it's eating up precious resource. Your brain is 10% of your body mass, but uses 25% of your energy. So if you've got something that you'll keep thinking about from time to time, it's using up excess energy and it's stopping you being productive. So getting this frog eaten before 10 o'clock in the morning, when we've got our most energy, it frees up all that extra capacity for the rest of the day. It allows your brain to be clearer thinking for the rest of the day, and hence you become more productive. And you feel a whole lot better. And if you feel a whole lot better, guess what? Your team are going to be more motivated as well. So that's the sort of science behind eating a frog at the beginning of the day. So also think about having a priorities list. So at the end of each day is the best time to do it. Handwrite what you've got to do for the next day. Some science about handwriting, it connects your brain more than just typing, because your brain's using a whole lot more neurons than if you're typing. So handwriting connects to your subconscious brain, so it helps you to forget about those things, takes it out of your conscious brain. You'll also find one client of mine started to handwrite at the end of the day his to-do list, and he found he had the best sleep he'd ever had. So that's a benefit too. Also, by the time you come around to the next day, some of those things you've written on the to-do list, you come up with some solutions, because your subconscious brain is far more powerful than your conscious brain. And while you're sleeping, it's mulling those over and brings up some solutions to that. So there's some thoughts for you. And also one other thing with your priorities list, at the end of each week on a Friday, write your priorities for the next week. What have you got to do for the next week? And get all your team to do this, by the way, daily and weekly. And on a Monday morning, have a work in progress meeting where everybody shows what they've got to do for the coming week. So you're clear, you can see who needs help, what resources you need to pass around. and you can save time there as well, increase productivity and avoid wasted time. The third part of this, we've mentioned self-mastery, delegation mastery, and now planning mastery. Now, this is a quote I enjoy from Dale Carnegie. An hour planning can save you 10 hours in doing. So this plan here, this is a quarterly action plan. You can see you've got 12 weeks across the top, 12 or 13 weeks across the top. We've got 3 or 4 goals down the side. And we've got what you're going to be working on each week. Some weeks there's more than others. So when we've got this, what's the benefits of planning? You know, make a note on your sheet. What do you think are the benefits of planning? And just jot those benefits down. I'll read out a few. So benefits of planning: increase focus, stay in focus for the essential, or focus for the essential things, but it's also essential for success and productivity. Stay in focus. We've already talked about earlier the increased productivity if you have focused time. This tells you what you should be focused on. It inspires greater achievement. So when you're planning cultivates an environment that inspires and motivates your employees to aim for and achieve even higher goals than they've in the future. It optimizes your resource, so you can say who's doing what and when. Reduces stress. Remember, if you know what you've got to do, then that's going to reduce your stress. And reduce stress, we already know, means less time off sick and more productivity. And it amplifies the success rate. Without planning, you can't measure your progress. So planning helps you to see your goals and when you've achieved them, and drives you on to achieve more. So an example might be, imagine you've decided to do some marketing to grow your business. You could go right ahead and take out an ad in a magazine or an online to advertise your products or services. You could even pay somebody to design it for you. But if you plan it first, you could think, who's our target market in detail? Where can you find them? What are their pain points? Then you could think about your existing customers. What's your average sale? What's the lifetime value of your customers, to give you an idea of what they're worth as a customer, which help you understand how many leads you need. All of a sudden, you've got all this information you need for a successful marketing strategy. And the only difference is planning. So on a daily basis, just 10 minutes of planning could save you 2 hours a day just by being focused. And once you've got that plan in place, then stick to it. What I find is at the end of the day, if I write a to-do list at the end of the day, I'm not the same person who's completing the to-do list the next day. Does that make sense? And what I mean by that is that I'm thinking about the person who's doing this as a third person. I'm not thinking about myself. So I'm writing the priority list down without any emotion. I'm just thinking logically, right, this is the first thing they need to do. This is the next thing. This is the next thing. This is the next thing. When I come to do it the next day, I'm more emotional because I don't really want to do it. It's like we said, the brain takes up a lot of our energy, 25%. And so our brain naturally wants to avoid thinking time because it uses up more energy. So, but if we make a commitment to ourselves to just follow that list, then we'll be more productive because it was written by the logic thinking person the night before. What are you thinking now? Well, earlier on I mentioned about how we can take those parts of our tasks and our activities that are important and put those into an ideal diary. So let's have a look now at what I call a default diary, or your ideal week. Now, in this diary, we've got pretty much every minute of the day mapped out. Now, the reality is that you probably won't have that time mapped out. But what you could do, you could start with an hour a day of focus time and put that into your diary. and then build on that. The sort of things we want to have in the diary first are your rocks, the most important things. These will be important, but not urgent. So it could be working on the business. It could be time with the family. It could be going to the gym. It could be one-to-ones with your team. This is the important stuff that it's not urgent because it's not going to have an immediate impact, but it will have an impact if you don't do it. So try just having first of all, think, what are those important things that are not urgent that I need to have in my diary? Make a list of those and get those into your diary. If you can build the rest of your week around that, great, but just start off small. And if you want a template from that, then just message me and get in touch. So we've talked a lot about time and specifics, and there's a lot about time management, and people do or don't use strategies, and there's the same strategies that go around. I want to look at a different way of how you can save time. And I want to share with you a story about the lion, the mouse, and the antelope. So when I say story, it's just really sort of a fact, really, that the reality is that lions living on the African plain, they can actually capture and kill and eat field mice. However, it turns out that the energy to do that is greater than the calorific content of the mouse. So if the lion spent his whole day hunting, eating, and killing field mice, he would slowly starve to death. So a lion can't live on mice alone. So lions need to eat antelope. Antelope are big, so are wildebeest. While it takes more energy to get it, more speed and strength to capture and kill, once they've killed it, they provide a huge feast for the lion and for their pride. So a lion can live a long and happy life on a diet of antelope. The difference between mice and antelope is really, really important relative to how the lion spends its time. So if in your business, you're spending all your time and energy after field mice, your short-term rewards are a feeling of activity, and they might even be accomplishment. However, in the long run, your business is going to suffer and maybe even die because you're chasing mice, not antelope. Just think about that for a moment. The question to ask yourself is, am I spending my day chasing mice or hunting antelope? And can I use my time better to focus on bigger things in my business rather than smaller issues? So what is the size of the client that I'm targeting for the future growth of my business? Is it mice type energy expanding clients? Or is it larger clients that will be more profitable and take less energy? So let's use the example of the accountant that we used earlier, a small business where they're collecting a carrier bag of receipts once a year and going to a lot more work and a lot less profit versus a bigger company that's got accounting software, and guess where the accountant's focus for marketing should be? So if we're focusing on those little people that take a lot more of our time, we're going to expend a lot more energy and not be successful, versus if we focus on the great stuff. So a good exercise on this is for you to grade your clients A, B, C, and D. So some of the things you might want to grade your clients on is time. How much time are you having to spend with them? How much profit are you making from them? How much do they pay on time? Are they enjoyable to work with? So grade your clients on these and see how they come out. Are you spending time with A grade clients or with D grade clients? By the way, A is awesome, B is basic, C is we need to change them, and D is dead. D, the dead ones, the ones that are not paying on time, they moan about what they pay you, they're taking too much of your time, not making enough profit. Get rid of those to your competitors. Let them waste their time on them and you focus on the A grade customers. Another thing to think about is they might not be an A grade client, but if they're giving you lots of good A grade referrals, then maybe you keep those. But generally, D grade clients won't give you A grade referrals, they give you more D grade clients. So, do you need to capture an action around that? Lastly, I just want to look at systems. To leverage our time, this is how you're going to get your time back in the long run. Is about putting systems and processes into your business. So let's have a look at what the acronym might stand for. You can see we love an acronym here. Saving yourself time, energy, and money. So this is about streamlining your processes, improving your communications, enhancing your decision making, and optimizing your resources. So a good place to start is with yourself. Where are you spending most of your time? Look at the activity you're spending most of your time on and create a process for that. We'll do another webinar on systems and processes specifically, but start with the activity you're spending the most time on and capture it. So a system could be anything. It could be a checklist. Checklist is the simplest, most effective form of a system. Pilots use them every flight to make sure you don't crash. So it's good enough for pilots, then it's pretty much good enough for us. Has each of your team got a checklist? So a checklist, it could be if the thing that you're doing is on a screen, can you do screen capture? Screen capture is great. It shows the person exactly how to do each step of the way, and you can even talk through, record your voice and explain what you're doing as well as being visual. It could be a list that you write down. There's all sorts of ways. It could be pictures of how you want things done. There's all sorts of ways of creating a system that will help you get back your time. So we're pretty much out of it now, time. So what I want you to do is just to look back through your notes and see what's been the greatest learning from today and what actions you've taken from today. Capture an action point, because it's one thing being on this call and doing some learning, but if you do nothing with it, it's a waste of time. So what action will you do, and who's going to hold you to account to achieve that action? The power of making an action and sticking to it is an indication of your future success. So it's been awesome having you on the call today. Lovely to see you here, and those of you who are watching this on record. If you need any of those items that I mentioned earlier, just send me a direct message. But until next time, I'll speak to you soon.
The webinar has ended. Thank you for joining. Goodbye.